Hey there, beloved Ascension pioneers, and welcome to another one of my videos, which is a continuation of the Star Wisdom video playlist. So today I want to greet you with my new Elven Tiara circlet. I made it during this weekend and I just couldn't stop. I was doing it for hours and hours. And this was actually after this golden array of Christ integration on our planet, and I always had this gold circlet in my head, and it just didn't leave me alone until I finally sat down to make it this Saturday. And the piece wanted to stay with me because it's priceless and it's very cute. It has these infinity danglers, and it has like a star, like a sacred star, and it's you might think it looks like a helmet, and when in fact it really is more like a circlet. So this is what I wanted to share. So we had a lot of expansion recently, and today in this video I want to expand on the topic of the sacredness of our own purpose. I had this phrase ever since the passing of the new year and our initiation into something very exciting and new. I constantly had this sentence in my head, which you probably know, and it goes a bit something like this. What God has put together, let no man separate. So when a lot of people hear this, they think it just refers to the concept of marriage and a relationship between man and woman, like the sacred marriage that is holy and sacred, and you don't need certain physical proof and validation to honor that commitment and that level of spiritual connection. But in fact, this can be viewed in so many different levels and perspectives. And I was actually trying to get this video done for weeks now, for 2 weeks probably, and there were other things that I shared first, and now this finally came into fruition. So I want to read you a piece. It's like an automatic writing that I used for my most recent article, which you can see on my webpage. And it's about the sacredness of our purpose, and it's about expansion into understanding that who you are is who you are, and who others are is who they are. And a lot of times, because people intermingle with others and their egos get involved, and there's dramatizing reactions, and people don't always understand. Or, even in the global and the collective sense, when there's so many of those who want to control and stop or prevent certain things from happening in the physical and the collective, and want to prevent certain races of beings or certain souls who want to grow a certain way and have certain experiences from experiencing that. And you can't do that because we are only responsible for our own choices and our own growth and what we do in our sacredness of purpose. So this is very important to understand how sacred it is. And just today, or was it yesterday, I saw on Doreen Virtue's page called Assertiveness for Earth Angels. There was this note that said, don't spend your time or don't waste your energy analyzing other people's egos. And it's just so true. And a lot of times, certain people get too involved in others, and they tell them what their lessons are, what they should be learning, or maybe this is this and maybe this is that, and all these projections. And this is something so important for us when we are in a higher path of our Christ itself. It is really important to move within every aspect, not just think your guidance is coming from within. This is one aspect, but another aspect is that you deal with yourself, that you stay focused and present in your own self, because a lot of people tend to get very involved and in analyzing and dissecting others and what they do and why they do it and which is really just preventing them to walk further in their own self-empowerment and mastery. So I'll read you the short piece that I wrote. This was at the beginning of January already, and it came through sort of like Spirit sharing with me why this is so important. And then I will share with you further notes, and I would like to give you an example so you know in your own life what to be observant about. Maybe there are going to be other people who will test you in that way, in that regards, that you will stay more true and faithful to yourself. And there was, last week I was driving in my car, there was this song from Elo playing, and there was just beautiful beginning to the lyrics, which says something like, she was a good girl, something like that, and she never led to be swayed by the notions of somebody else. So it spoke about staying true to yourself, always being within yourself. And when you will be clashing wills with somebody else, or you'll be telling them what to do or what their lessons are, you're just going to be actually sabotaging yourself. And why this is so important is because this year is a year of self-mastery. It's a year of focus. And just this week, I did a spirit message. Please go to my Facebook page. I probably won't post so much this week because I need to prepare my art block finally. And this baby wants to mature in the physical. And this is what I did for the entire week. And a lot was about boundaries, which is exactly that. The sacred vows to ourselves, staying true to ourselves, valuing, but also, materializing our commitments. So following up with them. So following through our plans that we have in our devotions. This is very important. So this year, like I said, will be a year how to stay focused in your mastery and in what you want to do, what you want to accomplish in your own work of devotion to service, to this path of, for example, I want to do lots of products now. I want to offer, I've been talking about these things for a while now, like the stones and the stone oracle, and to offer these pieces to somebody who might resonate. All these things I wanted to put them offer, but a lot of times there's a lot of energy coming in from others who want to be there and have attention of ours and just distract us, which is our own test and challenge and initiation eventually. So this is the reason why I'm making this. It's kind of like assertiveness for us, Earth Angels or Ascension Pioneers or whatever we may call us. It's just beings who want to be really authentic and real, and we want to live experiential spirituality, not just, things to be understood or, discussed about. It's not enough. For me, everything like that really begins to quickly bore me because it's just, I want to create. I'm a creator, not a debater. So this is my mantra for this week and beyond. I want to also, like I said, give you an example and something that happened to me recently. It was a while ago, but I want to share it in relation to what this means. So this is the article is called "Protecting What Is Sacred," and I'm reading this to you so you can have a better understanding of why what you do is so important for you and why this is so sacred and how you must protect this space of intimacy, because it's very intimate. It's between you and source, and other people don't know what it's about. They don't have your insight. They don't have your life purpose. They don't understand sometimes why you do things the way you do them. Sometimes when I write something, people say, oh, but you shouldn't explain it this way or shouldn't do it that way. And I wrote a lot of articles about this recently, and they don't know, they don't understand. They might perceive it that way, and they might say, they might ask you why you're doing this, and you don't have to defend yourself or explain yourself. You can explain in a nice way, but not in a way to defend yourself. So also what is important here is this has to also do with the basic commandments. Like Moses got the 10 commandments on the burning mountain from the I am that I am, the God of all existence, of all that is. And this is one of the commandments, is that your purpose, your life, your mission, it is so important, it is so sacred, it is beyond anything else. And once you discover it, once you live it, it becomes an intimate living thing. It becomes like this special child that you nurture and protect, kind of like the mother has a child and she will learn to protect the child. And this is the same thing. Your creations, your purpose is your own child. And it's important to understand what you're bearing and what you're birthing, and to kind of keep it a sacred thing, and to keep it pure, not tainted from the energy and distractions from others or situations that are not really within your purity and within your own resonance. So this has to do with the saying, like I said, what God has put together, let no man separate. And I'll read the fine print to you now. This is speaking about the fact that each individual purpose is sacred and holy unto itself. What is between a man and his soul, and the Almighty, no one can come in between. This does not only imply the sacredness of the marriage between the husband and wife, but all that is between us and our individual personal purpose and path of our soul. It is our sovereign integral self. There are many who wish to come between the sacredness of one and their source by falsely preaching onto them what they should and shouldn't do. So sometimes these are just projections of their own mirage, so their own maybe assumptions and experiences, not yours. When we believe that we know more about someone's path than they do, we clearly are not acting out of love. This is divine love, the spirit love. And most definitely, we're not helping anyone. We do that out of an egoic tendency to control someone in their own process of unfolding and becoming. Because as you know, I oftentimes say that it's not just source. Source is also creation. Source is not separate from its creation. It's one and the same. So we are in infinite becoming, and at the same time, we're also the eternal being. We do not respect the divine nature in another, and we falsely portray ourselves as a rescuer and a preacher, and we just feel like we know more than they do. While in fact, we are nothing else but a meddler. So we kind of come and meddle in something that is not us to meddle in. What you meddle with becomes your own karma to resolve, and what you preach unto another through your limited egoic beliefs, which are just projections of your own patterns. You need to practice yourself. Usually people, who preach the most, they need to practice and they need to tend to this and they need to get an understanding about themselves. So go deep within and explore where the clashes of the ego have gotten the best of you, and mostly why. When you get to the why part, then it dissolves naturally. Where are you denying the sacredness of the one and personal sovereign God in everyone? So this is, the oneness is also the sacred individuality aspect, the unique divinity in all of us. Everyone is perfect just as it is and just as they are. And some live in a very big self-created paradox where they believe in it, while at the same time, they do not practice those sacred laws and what they believe in, but they do not walk their talk. They only believe in perfection of all, but they do not truly experience it in their true reality. So true experiential spirituality is only when you live that way, when you experience it. Not like you have a belief, but you never feel it. There's this beautiful example in the movie Contact when she's trying to explain the rational scientific way, and he asks her, well, how can you prove some things? How can you prove God? The man who is with her at that time. And she says, well, it needs to be proven. It's science. And he says, did you love your father? She says, yes. And he says, well, prove it. And that's the main thing. You can't rationalize about these things. And it needs to be an intimate experience and which is felt. So many times this comes forth, if you just believe but you don't practice, you don't experience it. It comes forth through constructive criticism of others, which you believe is constructive, but it's really not, because criticism is what it is. And it's making assumptions about others and their path, which is none of other people's business anyway. Yes, none of other people's lives are our own business. And when we interfere through ego, we are masked behind the great veils of illusion and we cannot clearly see. So the more that we fall into this paradox, the more we will be clouded in our vision. We won't be actually acting out of purity and divine integrity. The truth is, Source is individualized this way for a reason. And each particle is sovereign, whole, and independent on its own. No one knows true purpose, the purpose and unfolding of that sovereign particle better than the sovereign integral on its own. So that's just natural. Those who are humble and knowing know of the sacred law, and they would never impose themselves and their projections onto another, as truly they are just of their own making. So assumptions are based on what they need to learn and master on their own. This is actually when we assume according to our own lessons. So whether you approach another with the mentality like, you are to know this and you are, such and such, or, you just define someone, you're engaging only in your own inner conflict. So this is usually your own conflict. It's not that of another who is just standing there and just receiving all of that from you. Something unconscious within you is that it's not yet internalized, therefore you will project it and externalize it. So it's not yet whole and complete, and so you project it onto another. The whole question here is, will you be willing to see through those base illusions of ego nature and transcend them, or you will become their slave, which is what happens when you surrender onto that. It just clouds you, and you become these clouds, although you're not in truth those clouds. Yes, the awareness of this can only come through real self-inventory, honesty and purity, and let the light of illuminated truth show you the light. And then walk your path with honesty and dignity, and let others walk their own. The only ego you need to tame and deal with is your own. So it's not that of others, it is your own. Be the light, walk in truth. So this is what Spirit shared with me. And why this is so important is because when we're really living and walking as divine masters of the self on earth, this doesn't mean masters of others, it means masters of our own self. We clearly are always coming from a state of love, which is the law of non-interference, like all benevolent beings have. and they take that into account, and they live by those sacred laws and principles. And this means respecting somebody in a way that you don't project your stuff onto them. So when there's purity and respect, this doesn't happen. And I want to share with you this example, which happened maybe a few weeks ago. This person wrote to me, and they had enough enough ego to call me certain things, and they said this is how you should do things. Just, they were actually giving me instructions on how I should do this. And this happens rarely, but when it does, it's always a lesson for me, to look at the deeper message behind all of this. And at the same time, they were comparing me. This is why you're not as big as this person, who has thousands of viewers and all of these things. I'm like, what is this? What, do I even want to be? It's not my path, It's just, what is that? It's like pure projection. And when we do that, and when we think, oh, I'm just here to help you, and we're actually really not helping. And this is not the benevolent, purely loving, divine love perspective. And when we do that, we're actually trying to govern another. And the funny thing about that person who said those things to me was that they were saying how I'm perfect, how everybody's perfect, but, there was like, you're perfect, but. So we're perfect in our imperfection. That means that wherever we are, it's perfect. So at the same time, the person said to me that I'm perfect, but I should do this way, and I should think that way, and I should da. So there's like a whole list of things. And it was like this paradox on its own. And it was funny how you can say something, and then with the other sayings that you're putting out there, you're totally denying what you said in the first place. So it was really, really a good example that I wanted to share with you guys. So let's move on further, because it's not so important for me to discuss it or analyze it here. Just one thing is to use it as an example. So things that come as our lessons and triggers, and they want to show us something, that there's something there for us to either share or be observant about. It's to make an example out of it. It's to exemplify it, not to analyze it. You see, that's a big difference here. So like I said, this year, there's going to be a lot of this energy when it's reaction versus response. So when there's things like this happening, ask yourself, what is this showing me about how I can move further into my self-mastery, not to become a being of reactions? Because when you do, you're just falling to their own state of awareness or non-awareness or lack of it. So observe this, when somebody is clashing this way, they're just clashing within their own self. So they believe they have answers for others. They believe they know better. And when you're going to be involved with that energy, you're just actually going to create a conscious thread of energy that's going to go and link with that. And it's going to become more and more thought patterns. It's going to become denser and denser, and this is how you'll create that. And why these things happen is for us to have a deeper vision and perspective of what we no longer want, of what we are finally ready to let go. So this is very important. So I'll go through my notes now, because this was probably 2 weeks ago, and to see that I better don't forget anything, because I made a lot of notes, because this actually concerns a lot of other things which are happening now in the global, which there's so many beings. There's different beings who have different myriads of experiences, and when you try to just filter things through your own perception, what you're doing is you're lacking divine vision, because you don't understand that everybody is right where they are, right where they need to be, and serving on their own level of awareness, and that's it. And that's it. That's where you end, and that person begins, period. So this is really important, and that's why I will go through notes so that I don't forget anything, because I noticed that in the New Age community, there's a lot of talking about all these battles between light and dark, and you've seen me mention this. And why this is so important is because you can change the fate of the whole world. This means this world consists of many races of beings. What you can do is empower yourself to not be manipulated or governed by the free will of other space beings, maybe, and that's just it. And then you create your own reality, your own paradigm, and you create your own little piece of heaven, and you walk into self-mastery and self-empowerment, and you attain that, and you hold that level, and you share that by giving an example to others who also want to move with you to that level of expansion. But what you can do is you can change if certain beings have a group karma, or they have a group of purpose to fulfill in the bigger picture, which you won't always see as a human being. You won't be able to comment on. You won't be able to always understand through your human limited perception. So move away from it. Move away from that drama. Move away from the entire, this is, how it is. And At the same time, what I'm noticing is in the conscious community, sometimes there's like throwing sand in our eyes because we don't want to see what's happening. So that's also not the solution. The solution is to know and to empower ourselves with that knowledge, what's happening in our planet, to see these different forms of consciousness that are playing out different multitudes of realities, to have a bigger vision about it, and then to see what we want to choose for ourselves. Because we need to see things that are happening. This is not victim consciousness. This is not conspiracy theories, but this is being consciously observant and aware. So sometimes I'm noticing either one aspect or the other. And there's not a whole lot of people who are in the path of the master. That means the middle path. You embrace everything, but you're still choosing and co-creating only your own. So let's move on to the notes. Why is our purpose so sacred, and what does saying, what we're sharing with you, what God has put together, let no man separate, what is this so important, and what does it mean? And like I said, it doesn't only stand for marriage, but our marriage, our sacred marriage, is with our higher self, and it is the soul married to spirit. The soul is the constant becoming, the feminine part of creation, and the spirit is the non-moving, the always present light of the masculine part of creation, if you can call it like that. This has nothing to do with gender. And this is why there's individualization of our source self, and why each of us and our paths are different. And you won't always understand, and you're so excited about your path sometimes. You know, maybe you're getting certain answers, and then you're so excited about it that the moment you get this excitement, you're no longer neutral sometimes, because it becomes an overly infatuated notion. And then you want to project into all the other people, and why don't you do it this way too, because it's so good. And you don't know what's their path, and you can't mingle. You can just be yourself. And really all we need to do is be ourselves. So if somebody will compare you with somebody else, or how you should be famous like this person or that person, it's just nonsense. So the example is like, for example, oh, I have this good example. This woman shared with me that there's people who are doing silent January retreats. So like the whole month of January, when the year begins, they're going into the silence and they're just staying silent. And it felt like, wow, interesting, you know, but my path, I'm constantly creating. I'm already in source. I'm a source being. I don't need that silence to find God. I am a literal extension of God, and I'm a creator. I'm a creator being. So I always have this feeling that for some people who might say, well, this is good because that's what they'll be needing, that's what they'll be guided towards. Sometimes they'll project it to others, and they say, wow, this is what we should do. And it's not really true, because there's myriads of different levels of awareness, just like it is out in space. Earth is just the micro within the macro. So what's happening in the outer space with different evolution of different beings and star races, it's the same on Earth. So we need to follow up with that. And for me, you know, being a creator is being in my body in action, being that creator, that divine creativity in action. And for me, I don't need to seek God, or you know, I just need to shine and radiate what I already am. And this is where I am right now. Maybe some souls are still seeking. They're still searching for something. They're still longing for something. So that's what's good for them. And I wouldn't say, wow, why are you doing this? You know, you shouldn't seek. Well, if they want to seek something, if they still have that constant desire to seek something, well, this is what it's eventually going to bring them to something that they need. And it's just, when you understand things from the bigger picture, it means that you understand things drama-free. There's no entanglement, because each time you want to intermingle with something on that level that you project, you will create kind of like karmic bonds, like these ties. So when you're releasing this, eventually when you come to that realization and awareness, you should really cleanse your whole auric field, because a lot of times what I'm noticing is we might feel we want something or we like it, but somebody else is projecting that to us so strongly that if we're not aware enough, if we're not empowered enough, and especially if we're coming out of our beliefs, we're allowing that space for other people to flourish on our garden with their own gardening abilities and skills. And we really, sometimes we think we want something and it's not really us, because we have actually inherited so much of their own feeling that we think it's our own feeling. So this is a very important thing to observe here. That is why it is so sacred to stay in your own energy, to stay in your purity, to not give it away to something or someone else. This is not the same as sharing yourself, because we're always going to be sharing and communicating with others. But if in any way and form this relationship is not free, it's not with an integrity, pure respect, and it's unconditional and absolutely really without any conditions or terms, and there's pure respect there, unless that is so, these things can happen, and you can quickly inherit the beliefs or sensation of someone else, and you think, oh, that's me, but it's really them, and it's their desires coming into your auric field. So there's also, I already shared with you the example of this email that I got from this person, and he spoke about fame, what I should do to, why I'm not like this person. He mentioned somebody, and it just sounded to me so shallow, so superficial to think of people like that and to literally categorize us and put us in boxes. And it's just, like I said, it's a paradox. The person was saying to me, there's only being, you don't need to do. And at the same time, they were telling me what to do to be that way. It was just really funny. There's being and doing. There's the feminine and the masculine. Those of you who haven't yet embraced the wholeness of both, the totality of who we are, then you're constantly going to be, just like thrown from one place to another. We're always going to be seeking that balance, which is the middle place, the middle point. So the person said to me, don't have a relationship with yourself, just be yourself. And at the same time, they were giving me all these things like what I should do, and it was like totally not being myself. So if I am myself and perfectly guided, I am right where I am, I'm sharing what I need to share. And it's like giving me instructions, and this wasn't the first time. So we're really not here, the person said, to be spiritual. We're here to be human. No, we're here to be the merging of spirit and matter. We are both. We can't deny one aspect. Some people go too much into the physical nature and they forget their spirit. Some people move totally into spirit and they're just like, the physical is not important. None of this exists. It's all illusion. But there's grounded, conscious, aware individuals who are walking the path of truth, who understand the middle point, who understand the middle path. They know, like I said, the oneness of the creator and the creation and the being and the doing and the constant creativity through that creation. So this is a kind of like an inner conflict when we do that. And I wanted to bring that out to awareness for all of you who still might have a couple of those beliefs. Which really need to be dissolved for us to really understand why creator and creation are one and why there's no separation. So until we get that, we might project those beliefs to others as well. So both is as one. Okay, there's this thing that I wrote here. Why do we need such assumptions, and where are they really coming from? This is a really good question to ask yourself every time you're stating something that it's not really a statement about you, but you're writing it for somebody else. You're making a statement, you're making a declaration for them. Ask yourself, is this really coming from spirit? Because spirit doesn't do that. Our spirit self is not that way at all. So for me, personally, I don't, I guide those who come to me for guidance, and I don't judge anyone. I just walk my own path and my own awareness, and I'm always focused from within to without. But a lot of times I'm seeing this, that it's not always the case. And people do get entangled too much in others and what's happening physically around them without asking themselves, why do I feel that about that person? So what inside me is creating that? So for me, I enjoy being and the becoming. It's both one. And I just feel that it's really important to stress this out. Why do we still feel that need to project at someone this way, And where is it really coming from? This is something that's like a belief. That's, people call it the spiritual ego. And well, one of the people I knew said, well, I don't call it spiritual ego because it's not spiritual at all. And it's true. When you say spiritual, what this means is it implies the word spirit, and the word spirit is purity. It's that pure divine light of who we are. And when it's spiritual ego, so that's kind of, again, you see paradox within itself. So where is this coming from? That ego, this, because like I said, spirit never shares this way through us. It doesn't communicate through us this way. And those individuals who don't live in the heart space, they don't know. So they think they know, but they really don't, because if they did, they would eventually drop the need to speak to others in this way. And this means recognizing another as holy and perfect, not just by seeing them, but treating them that way as well. So it's a paradox when, like I said, saying you're perfect, but at the same time you're not treating somebody as that, and you're imposing on what you believe about them to be true at this moment. And this really, when you go into extremes and you go into labeling, and like I said, you forget that sacred vow that each of us has made before our own God, our own individualized I am, to do what we do, to expand how we expand, period. And each of us should be respecting these vows that are sacred unto us and for us. So defining something as a constructive criticism, this is really old. It's what sort of criticism is constructive? We should be encouraging each other. We should be uplifting each other. We should be sharing through love, not saying, well, I'm criticizing you because I want good for you. You can share awareness with somebody. You can, and that always comes when awareness is shared through love. Otherwise, it's really not awareness. It's the mind, it's beliefs. When awareness shares through love, it asks questions. So when somebody is doing something, you will see that they're really actually kind of in the mode of maybe being they're sabotaging themselves. What you can do, you can start asking them, what do you feel about this? Can you go? Then you can start encouraging them, but you can't like, you do this and that, and you should do this and that to grow, to evolve. Da, 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 da. You're being like that, You're acting like in an army, like you're gonna prepare somebody, I'm gonna train you. You can't do that. People are not robots. We're not robots. We're beings of holiness. We're beings of pure heart. We're compassionate beings, and a lot of them have surpassed this and suppressed this to the level that they can no longer feel. All they do is just project, and they're actually relating to each other through the mind, not really the heart. So this is kind of sad to see sometimes, because we really are the beings of the heart. The organ that develops first is the heart. Then the brain gets evolved so we can function in this physical dense reality. So the heart only encourages and empowers. Projecting and labeling is not empowering, and it goes against all that is sacred and holy. So the sacred truth here is that Source did not create this way, as some say. God wanted to experience separation, so that's why we're experiencing what we did. This is not true. God actually wanted to experience individualization. That's a huge difference. You can be individualized and still don't feel as separate. That's a totally different concept. And that is not the same. So God or Goddess or all that is Source did not divide into multiple parts. It created multiple parts to experience, to go out and experience what he also creates. He, she, it's not a gender thing. So all these particles, they're all within the infinite creation, and they're all sovereign, they're all whole, they're complete, they're all connected. So that's the funny aspect. When you do this, when you go against somebody this way, that you don't respect their own sacredness and purpose, you're actually going against your own self. And this is the saddest part, that people don't realize when they do that. For me, it's not sad if somebody comes and would treat me this way, because I don't allow to be treated that way. I don't live that way. But it's sad because they still do that to themselves. And it's the same with the illusion that some people portray for twin souls. They say they separated, and now they're going to find each other, and they're no longer going to be separate. In the Source truth, we're never separate. There's never separation. And it's not like we divided in that way. We're just holding consciousness on different levels of experience. So there can be this constant balance of that. And we're always one and always connected. So also, each individual part is sovereign. Like I said, a sovereign unto itself, and exists within the sacred universal laws, which apply to us all. But that doesn't mean that applies in spirit, but that doesn't mean when we go out into creation and explore that we always cherish them. No way. People don't do that all the time. When souls become people, they don't always do that all the time. So when we go against them, we actually create separation. So Source didn't create separation. And when we move out into these experiences, we create it. And we perceive ourselves as separate from all that is. And since we forget that we are parts of source, we want to either override it. It's like with some of the dark themes, it's like, oh, I'm going to go against my source. I'm going to become an immortal, not just in spirit, but I'm going to create immortality also in the physical. I'm going to dominate my God, I'm going to, it's just funny because this is a state of complete forgetfulness, who you are as a divine, integral whole being. And sometimes this happens, and it's just, we should be who already are a source. We already are. So this is like, again, another paradox. And this often leads to the violation of the universal laws, this kind of forgetful state. And a lot of star beings and star races were going against that. And it's happening on the earth too, which leads me to this topic of false light and dark, which I already addressed many times. And this is, I remember I was reading this article, right, about being sovereign and self-empowered. So not allowing somebody else to hold an energy over you. So you're master of your own field, your own energy field, and you claim your own field. So somebody asked me, can you share more about this? What does it mean to own your energy, to claim your field? And if you don't, somebody else will. It means that, truly, honestly, if you don't fill your vessel with all of you, with all your divinity, which is the whole aspect of bringing source, which is not separate from its creation, but bringing the experience to look through the eyes of source through you and experience creation and all of it as divine and learn through it and expand. And this way, like I said, sometimes when this is forgot why it is this way, there's things happening that are not always benevolent. And why somebody can be possessed or overridden by the energy of somebody else, or they feel like dominated, they feel like a victim, it's because they still haven't filled all of themselves with their full divine potential, which is pure power. This is your spirit, that raw spirit power. And there's a whole playlist on my channel about self-empowerment. You can just see what resonates if something is there, if you feel that you still are not still fully standing in your power as a sacred being, because I remember if somebody approaches me with that energy, which is very dense, I really want to stress this, in some level of awareness we say positive or negative, but on a higher note, when we expand, we just actually see things as more light or less light. So more dense, maybe nature, and less dense, more light. That's it. There's just different levels of density. We don't separate anymore to positive, negative, which is extreme duality in that level of awareness. And here in that aspect, we will just see that if something feels less that light, what we're going to do for us to be more in that light. So this is why these things and these triggers happen. What else is there? So that light, true light, like I said, knows no separation. So there's no need to battle over it and who's winning, which side, light, dark, what. It's like the true benevolence, the full applying of the universal laws knows nothing as such. And when we're within the light of truth, there is no such thing, because all is already sovereign and free. We just need to wake up to that reality. And only when we are within true light, there's no light working, like I need to do that light work for things to change, that way. You're actually a light being. You're a luminescent being of light that just needs to activate its full potential and to be sovereign and radiate who we are without being told what to do by other beings, maybe entities who are holding that space. There was a woman mentioning this in the video that people, when they're doing emotional clearing and shifting timelines and doing timeline healing, source healing, which I call it, they also need to be aware of the fact maybe when a certain entity has entered their space, when they were not in their full power, and when they allowed, maybe for that part of the soul agreement, they wanted that entity to be a part of their experience so they can also gain something from it, to learn maybe how to master your own energy field. So when that time passes, when it feels like it's more restrictive than, it's a part of your natural learning, it means that it has passed. And you just need to utilize your free will to kind of get rid of that, in a sense, not getting rid of it, but you've done the work. Now you're ready to move on. This is also very important. So these beings and entities, and also false karmic boards, which this article was mentioning, that they tell you, you need to resolve this karma, which if you don't really feel it yourself, and you won't even know how you will know what to feel if you're not standing in your own body fully. Because a lot of people don't know how to feel or to be discerning enough because they haven't claimed their full body. That's why I always talk about, don't just worry so much about, I'm going to go out of body and I'm going to have all these beautiful experiences. You know, rather worry about how you're going to be fully in the body, because this is what's going to help you master your field and be fully present and learn to read different energies and be discerning and really feel what is and what is not, and what is within the light of truth and what isn't. This is also, I have one example I need to tell you guys about. There was years ago. This is just when my awakening was starting to take place. Me and my mom, we went to this person because we read somewhere in a magazine that she's working like this with this man who was here, very a leader in the terms of karmic diagnostics and things like that. And eventually I found out that's not even true, because I don't know how she claimed that she was teaching, she was learning under him, because she really wasn't. And she claimed to be, yeah, I'm a student, blah, blah, blah. And we went to her place because we wanted to have like a diagnosis, because I was in a really abusive relationship back then before my awakening, because this is what actually got me to awaken, and many other things. And I remember that when she answered that, you know, you have like this phone, you ring a bell, and she answered, her voice was so cold. And we got there, she was like smoking and so negative, and she had this look that really wasn't loving, and she was like cold. It was like cold energy there. And the way she said things was like, yeah, you're this, you're that, you know. She's like reading something like the astral, or wasn't even truth, wasn't, she wasn't at all connected to spirit. And I felt it right away, but I wasn't awakened yet, so I didn't know my power yet at that time. I didn't know that I didn't know that I can feel everything. And she was telling me, oh, you were this and that, you need to do this, you need to be humble, you need to be listening to that person who I was in a relationship with back then. And she was literally telling me to stay with that person who was really, really bad for me, okay? And it was definitely dark entities that were attaching themselves through her and working through her. You know, smoking is a big part of it, but not just that. And this is a huge deal, and a lot of people who are not standing in their power will actually take that as their truth, and they will start fearing, and they're going, oh my God, we really have that karma. And there's beautiful, beautiful beings of light who might have that experience. But if you're meant to experience this and you're aware about it and you're awake about it, means that it will actually help to expand you. So I have a BS detector, which people can't lie to me, and they never could. Sometimes I lie to myself and I say, okay, you know, it's not as bad as it looks, blah, blah, but I can read the energy right away, and I just know. So I wasn't even consciously aware of that back then, but I already knew it. I felt it with my whole heart. I felt this something really stinks there. And sometimes, you know, when you just say, something stinks here, and it's just really the signs, the red flags are everywhere. So this is my example that I wanted to share with you guys, and how these entities can also influence, and they always only influence people who are in ego state of being. That's why our leaders and the government are being influenced by a lot of these astral entities, because they can create these channels, these vortices of energy that attach themselves to these people, because they have the space to be manipulated. If you're pure, nothing can ever harm you, can stick itself to you or in any way or form, because your natural radiance of divine love is your natural shield. Okay, so in the true light, we are an illuminated being who lives and practices universal laws. These are the principles of creation. And like I said, one example is the movie for Moses. He got the 10 Commandments when he went up the burning mountain. And there's one example I wish to give you here also, the awareness that came through, because he was showing all these signs that he's being divinely guided by that higher presence, and that he's here to lead people into something new and to realize things, and why they were allowing themselves to be manipulated and enslaved in the first place. And you see, you can't really help people who don't want to be helped, because when he was going up the mountain, people eventually forgot that he you know, that the whole sea opened up. There was a gateway for them to enter safely and to make a passageway onwards. And he was gone for a few days, and they couldn't even be patient. They couldn't be entrusting that higher process. And there was a negative being there, let's call it like that, who started to manipulate them and telling them, yeah, you know, Moses is not who he says he is. So who you're trusting, why trusting him? So they actually started to party and have all this carnal games, and they started building this gold made, was it bull? I think it was a bull. And this is your God, worship that, you know. So it was a clear sign how easily people can become swayed by these lower notions, and it's just how easily they can disbelieve. They stop believing. It's like right away, because they didn't have a personal experience with it. This is the thing. in the beginning of the movie, when everybody says to Moses, "You're a prophet. You're the savior. You're the one who's going to do this." He's like, "No, I'm not," because he didn't actually have an experience on its own, and he constantly had doubts about it. And everybody who said to him, he was humble about it, and he said, "No, I don't know anything about this," until he had his own personal experience up in the mountain when the I am that I am, who spoke its name and shared the sacred principles, which we have later distorted, which they're not what we made them to be in our own language now. But there, in the beginning, there were these sacred truths that there's many of them, but those basic 10 principles, how you should apply them to be a holy, sacred being that you are in spirit, to live as a spirit self and body. And he received these sacred laws, but people later misinterpreted them, like I said. And one example is not to kill. It doesn't only apply here for humans, but animals as well. And I've mentioned this before, that there was a lot of negative ETs manipulation about this, because they wanted humanity to stay enslaved in lower densities. So only those who separate themselves from the light of one feel, actually, yeah, they can't feel this. So those who have separated themselves actually feed off of other beings, because they don't get their source straight from source. This is the truth here. And they constantly need that because they're in a living existence of their survival mode, not the co-creator mode and love, compassion, and applying the universal laws. So killing and fitting off of ourselves, or any kind of form that needs to die for you, which you believe, it's actually, again, it's not in compliance to those sacred principles and the vows. Yeah, this is always a crime against life, and that is why I'm choosing to call my food now life food, not death food. So this goes against these sacred laws, and that is why this planet sometimes is still out of, off from other galactic civilizations. Why sometimes people say, oh, we want them to visit us, we want this and that, but the fact being is that the kind of level of awareness that we have, like collectively, globally, not just a few who are really walking this planet through love, is it feels like hostile to them, and they don't want the frequency. Also, people who live, people, also beings who live in the inner earth, the Agartha, the Shambhala is the center. And they also, wouldn't survive these conditions here. So they're just being observers. And sometimes at a certain time and space, they come and they share with certain contactees so they can pass the wisdom along, so they can share. And yeah, about the general way of living within the higher wisdom. So also at the end, I want to conclude with, I already said this, what does the elven path mean? The elven path means, for me, it's not like you are an elf. I can play that I live in this, like kind of the reality that you feel, you emanate from on another multidimensional level. But it means that the level of awareness which you're applying right here and now. So when I say, for example, I'm an elven, this means that the energy of oneness and the sacredness, and applying the rules and principles, the divine principles of creation, and understanding nature and our oneness with it, and working with it, co-creating with it, not going against it. So this is a pro-life sort of awareness, not anti-life. This is the higher awareness, and it is all about awareness. So like I said, oneness with nature and all of life and creation. So for me, this is my own sovereign path, and I the time and energy I put in these videos and my writings is because I don't want you to live this path, but I give you the option that you can, because I can't want something for somebody else. Sometimes people say, I want you to be connected to your soul. I want so desperately for you to this and that, so I do these things for you. Ask yourself if that is truly unconditional love when you do things this way, because when you really love people on a soul level, you understand their freedom to experience as they want to. So this for me is the only true love, is that free love in spirit. And everybody needs to choose their own path, and no other being, whether incarnate or discarnate, which these entities which I was mentioning, should go against it or try to manipulate it or control it, because control is resistance. So in any sort of way, this really doesn't apply with the higher wisdom, and anything that goes with the saying oneness, when we just say it or whether we live it. It's very important. So think about it, meditate on this. Try to get your own insights. Don't listen to me. If you're listening to me, listen, but don't listen. You know what I'm saying? Become engaged in your own. There's so much information out there already. Everything can be researched in an instant. Sometimes people ask me, where you get this, how you get that. I work for it. I'm devoted to this. Things don't just fall out of the sky for me. It's because I understand my sacred oaths that I have made before coming here, and I just follow through them. I don't just sit and say, oh, I'm just a channel for divine will, and then I don't do anything. I am. And there is great attention to beingness, but at the same time, I came here in a form to bring things to form. That is why I have form. Otherwise, I know I would stay in my ethereal body. So, like I said, forget analyzing other people's paths or egos or everything. That if something doesn't resonate with you, just feel it as neutral, walk away, create something new, create the vacuum space or something you can enter. Don't interfere with anything. Live, in non-interference policy, so you can become a benevolent being of light, and live and let live. That's one of the greatest sayings in our history. And don't preach, but practice. So become a living example of what you feel for you. So be the real divine love that you are. And one of the final examples I want to give to you is the example of Lord of the Rings movie, which I always like to mention so much because it's really a great, not just one, but there's many great archetypes and messages there. In the trilogy, the whole time there's a focus on variations of creation. You have different levels of beings who live in a different way. The elves live differently than the hobbits, and the hobbits live differently than the dwarves, and dwarves live differently than humans, and they live differently than the dark side through the orcs and all of that. It's all of them are different sets of experiences, different levels of density of awareness. But the whole movie shows how at the end, if they knew how to work together without interfering, because sometimes you have this great example, when the elves don't want to go to war because they're visionary. They see that this example, it wouldn't have a greater benefit because they're visionary. They can see, they work with spirit because they're pure enough to be able to see like a long distance. And the dwarves, take it personally, and you can see that in the Hobbit movie. They have like this resentment playing out, like, they didn't come and help us. They just look at it from the lower perspective. They don't see the higher picture. And you see, this is what it comes into being when we're not coming from that higher elevated awareness. So if something isn't as you maybe want it to be, respect the divine, that it just is as it is for a reason. And this is what it means to have that faith in the divine and divine will, and just things happening perfectly as they need to. Because it's not enough to say, yes, everything is perfect, but then you want to control everything and everyone, then you're really not following through with what you believe. So when you believe in your heart, it becomes an inner knowing, and that's what is really important. In the next couple of video segments, I really want to expand more about these extraterrestrial influences, because a lot of my guidance lately has been following through with that. I'm not sure whether this will be this week because I have a lot of things to do, maybe next week or the weekend, we will see, but I really want to enhance more in that for us to have a greater vision of what's happening. I'm watching many shows right now, and I'm reading at the same time some things, and everything's coming through synchronistically, which is perfect. It's how things always come to me, and everything's always matching. But at the end, it's spirit that connects the fine lines, that connects the dots into this beautiful thread of awareness, which is weaving unto itself. So thank you for tuning in. I hope you got something from it. I hope you will learn how to live in this personal freedom, because we're not really free if we impose on the freedom of others. And we're only free if we live our own personal freedom, really, truly from our true self. So, so much love to all of you. I'll be seeing you soon, and take care. Have a beautiful, fantastic week ahead. Bye.